Good evening. My name is Mike and I'm a yoga teacher. And this evening we're going to do some movements as well as some meditation work. So for this evening type yoga practice, we can use a mat, or also even having something to sit on is fine. And we'll start in a seated posture. Feel free to always modify if you want to sit in a chair as well. One of the first things to do when we're starting to practice is be aware of the breath and the posture. So sitting with our sit bones down to the mat or onto the seat, and then raising the top of the head up towards the ceiling. Having a slight tuck of the chin in, not really forcing it back, but just enough to bring the top of the head up. Now, noticing the breath sinking down into the sit bones, the bottom of the pelvic bones there. And then straightening the spine, allowing it to extend upward all the way through the top of the head. The spine, of course, has a normal curve or curves, and it comes up into the neck and attaches right into the skull. That point at the top of the skull, we can imagine, is reaching up towards the sky. There's actually different points on the associated with anatomy that are related to energy centers. And that top point, which is kind of known as the crown of the head, is also known by the term Sahasrara, which is Sanskrit for the crown chakra. It's like an energy center extending up from the top of the head. There's more to mention about energetic bodies and astral, or maybe subtle anatomy, energetic type anatomy, that may be, associated with the physical body, different locations. However, it's something that's experienced and felt as well. Sitting, reaching the top of the head up towards the sky. Now let's pay attention to where the shoulders are. We're relaxing them, not so much rounding the upper back, but opening it up a bit and allowing the hips to crunch the abs a little bit so that we have some neutral pelvic alignment. We're not just swaying back, we're not just rounding, but sitting in kind of a straight posture. Taking a few breaths here, noticing where our shoulders are. And focusing on relaxing them down and away from the ears. Not forcing, but allowing them to be there, hang naturally away from the ears. Now let's take a few breaths here, still extending our head up to the sky and tucking the chin in. Several rounded breaths. Full deep down, imagining going down into the sit bones and reaching up through the crown of the head. Let's move into a kneeling posture. Maybe sitting back on our ankles or in a tabletop. I will move through a flow, reaching the hands forward in tabletop, and lowering the body towards the ground. We can remain on our knees if you like. Inhaling and pressing back up into a kind of a upward facing dog or cobra. The knees can still be on the ground as a modified. And pressing the shoulders down away from the ears. Taking some breaths here. Noticing that the fingers are spread wide. On the exhale, lowering down towards the mat. And then pressing back onto the heels again. We can even press all the way back into child's pose, resting the forehead against the ground. On the next inhale, we'll go into downward facing dog, pressing back into the feet and extending the legs. And exhaling into down dog. Now pressing the hip bones up towards the sky. We can go back to the knees if you want. And taking a few breaths here. We'll do one more flow like that. Reaching our chest forward next to our hands and lowering down. Exhaling. Inhaling and raising into cobra, modified upward facing dog or upward facing dog. Then exhaling back into child's pose. Taking a few breaths. Inhaling, looking up to the hands and extending the legs, pressing the heels toward the ground, and exhaling into downward facing dog. Taking another breath here, we can return to the knees, and then come back into that seated posture again. Now we'll work on some upper back shoulder movements. Finding our sit bones rooted down into the ground again, extending up through the spine into the back, reaching up with the crown of the head. Placing one hand on the ground and the other, inhaling and reaching up and over. Exhaling, lowering, and then on the other side, reaching up and over with that arm. Exhaling, lowering, let's do a few rounding of the back and then opening up. Exhaling and rounding, inhaling and opening up. Pressing the shoulders back and down. And exhaling, rounding, crunching a little bit at the abs. Inhaling, pressing the chest forward and opening up. Exhaling, rounding, and inhaling, opening up. Now I'll do that lateral arm bend again, placing one hand on the mat and either side, starting raising that arm up and overhead, reaching up through the fingertips, extending the top of the head up to the sky. Try to maintain that open chest, not rounding too much in the torso. Wherever we find ourselves today, inhaling again with the other arm reaching over, feeling the sit bones down into the mat. Exhaling, lowering. I actually sat for about 9 hours today in the classroom environment. Monday is more busy with sitting in class. And then I sat some more afterwards, with driving of course, and then doing some online quizzes for about an hour or so. And then a little bit of studying. But it can be really tight just from sitting all the time. Because my classes are so much more on Mondays, usually I gotta get prepped for the week a little more and knock out the quizzes, trying to get to bed at a decent time. So I didn't spend hours studying afterwards, just enough to get some stuff going again. But throughout the day, I'm constantly just keeping moving on the studying. But if you find yourself sitting a lot, you might want to do some of these movements, opening up the chest, maybe finding your posture and your breath, and if possible, get somewhere where you can actually move the whole body, as we were doing before. Let's move into some meditation. And if you have something to sit on, this is my meditation bench that my friend made me. His initials are carved right here. And you can also just sit on your heels like this, or find a cushion to sit on, or if you're comfortable just on the mat. Of course, just lying down and flat on the back is fine as well. I prefer to stay seated in that same posture. However, this Zen bench takes the pressure off of the ankles. So that way I'm able to stay here longer instead of just sitting right on the ankles. So we'll spend some time here noticing the posture, raising up from the extended spine, up through the crown of the head, and then focusing on our breathing. So we'll spend about 5 minutes here. Just focusing on the point of focus. of the meditation if you prefer, or remaining where you are, still paying attention to the posture and the breath. Perhaps we're more aware of some of the ambient noises that were happening. If you want, we can have some movement. Perhaps stretching the legs out in front and letting them release a bit. And we can inhale, raising our arms towards the sky if you decide to move a bit. And exhaling, folding forward from the hips, reaching the heart towards the feet. I'm really not wanting to round my back too much, but I'm feeling more of a restriction along the left hip and leg. I'm just going to keep it there. It's okay to round if you want, but it depends on what you're working on, what you're working with. I'd rather use the breath and more kind of an alignment with an engaged posture. Taking a few breaths here as we're releasing. Releasing with the breath and some movement. Of course, my lower back is a little bit rounded here because even sitting up straight I'm rounded, but this is as close as I am right now to having an extended back and folding forward. And because my muscles are engaged, it's kind of safe. I'm not just reaching into it and pulling myself forcefully, but it's still engaged with the breath and leaning forward. So even if there's some roundedness down in the lower back, it's still doing probably some good work. Again, probably no harm in just rounding your back because that's a natural thing to do. However, we're moving through this releasing pose, and it does help to engage the muscles and lengthen them, lengthen the posture as we're releasing. We can even place the arms overhead and reach up towards the sky. And exhale, bring your arms down at the sides again. Let's move into another 5-minute session for meditation. Noticing any difference with the experience. Maybe moving more deeply into it. We'll stay here for another 5 minutes. turning the awareness into the environment and awareness of the body again and the breath. And then maybe get some movement again. And by the way, I'm wearing this Veterans Yoga Project t-shirt. Of course, I don't teach with them yet, but they offer free yoga classes for veterans if you Google Veterans Yoga Project. They have them in a few studios as well as an online app, so I thought it was pretty good. Some really experienced yoga teachers on there, especially the Yoga Nidra yoga teachers that teach in the evenings. So, hopefully had some lengthening in the spine. I will end the practice, placing your hands together, and namaste.